All right. So what Scott's going to do for us is he's going to actually do some fireworks for us here. So we're going to actually start to see a demonstration of the GroupWise client as well as the web access client as well. So we'll go ahead and turn it over to Scott. Scott, we've allocated roughly about an hour for this, but it's more important that we cover all the bases that we want to cover and cover this thoroughly. Let people see what we've all been working hard on for so long. So I'll turn it over to you and get out of your way.
All right. Thank you. My name is Scott Clayton. I am the client architect for the GroupWise Windows client, and I'm excited to be here with you today to go over some things that we're very excited to show and to present in the next release of GroupWise. Before we get started on the actual details of things, I want to give you a high-level overview of a couple of the design principles that we worked on as we were approaching this release. First and foremost, we tried to as much as possible, give our users something that was familiar. Basically, their same stuff, but we wanted to make it easier to use and easier to look at day in and day out. So one of the design principles that we worked on, especially with regards to the update and the new look, is that we want to make what's most important to the user, their data. We wanted to make that stand out. So a lot of the coloring and the schemes that we used are towards that end. So if you can kind of look at it in that light, that might at least help you understand the direction that we're moving. The other thing that was a driving principle is that we found that in previous releases, sometimes it was difficult to tell what settings were displayed or what mode that you were in. And so we want to make it more obvious what settings are enabled and also to make it easier to change those, especially where change is something common that users want to do. So with that as a backdrop, I want to start by giving you a quick overview of the new look. And I'm going to start here in the home. The home has been redesigned mostly from a skin perspective. There really hasn't anything substantial changed in the home. So what you'll see is we've gotten rid of gradients where they used to be in the headers. We got rid of gradient paintings. We tried to mitigate borders that stand out and draw attention to themselves. And to just give you a contrast of that, I'm going to pop up this previous look. So this is what I'm talking about. The gradients here, the edges here, they've been removed. And this screen is actually a good example of why we did what we did. Everything on this screen seems to be competing for your attention, whereas when we go to Windermere, we're trying to make the spaces inside where your data is, inside the quick viewer and everything. We were trying to make that pop out and make the rest of the stuff blend into the background. Again, your actions, they're still there. They're still in the same place. The navigation bar is still in the same place. But we're trying to make the other stuff really pop out. As we transition to the mailbox, you can see we've also tried to do that in varying degrees by pushing the folder tree, which historically has been considered, it's a very utility feature, but it's also an incredibly complex one. And we found that especially to newer users, it can be kind of an overwhelming tool on the screen. And so we've worked really hard to make that be in the same place, but blend a little bit in, making your list, and if you use the quick viewer, that pop out more. And with that being said, we're also working very, very hard to make it so that you can function quite easily with the folder list hidden. And I'll go into that in more detail as we progress through this. So just as a contrast here, I'm going to go back and show you what the mailbox looked like in 2012, just so you kind of have a feel. Again, 2012 mailbox looked like this. A couple of things to highlight in addition to the overall look and feel is as we are playing with this summary mode, we're trying to simplify and put the basics on the screen. And so you'll see in the past where the dates were these long dates that had the time, we're breaking that down into things that are more useful at a glance. So, for example, this appointment that's upcoming is next Thursday at 9 a.m. Something very simple and easy to tell. These emails in this box came in yesterday, and so you see yesterday, you don't see a date. As that degrades past a week old, you'll just start to see the dates that they came in. Again, all of the information is there and available. It's just not in the most busy of the screens. One second. Can you show me what you're seeing here? Can you see the quick viewer completely? Sorry, I'm doing a little logistics of trying to see what's on the screen because I want to get underneath this tool.
This is what I have.
Okay. So if I move that over like that, are we able to see? I want to get to the edge of this quick viewer. Indulge me for just a second here. All right. I'll work on sliding it back and forth like that. But so what I'm trying to say is the complete date is still here visible inside the quick viewer, even though this is a scrunch view, or if you open it up, it's still accessible. But in this simple summary mode, we've chosen to, quite honestly, mirror some of the things that are happening on mobile devices where it's just a very simple, crisp interface that's easy to figure out at a glance. All right, transitioning through this high-level overview of the look and feel, I'm going to move to the calendar. And I'm going to start with the 2012 look of the calendar. You can see in this view where you have the white folder list, you have the white small calendars, and then you have this view that once again we had visually competing elements on the screen all together. And so it's more difficult to pick out your individual data and things that are most important. So as I transition back to Windermere now, we kind of have this graded color scheme from dark to light. And so the folder list itself is dark. The small months, while they're there and completely accessible, they're a little bit darkened, which makes this area in the middle pop out and stand out. And so your eyes are immediately drawn to that kind of white space on the screen where your data is, giving you that information. And again, I'll reiterate this. The toolbar, your navigation bar, and the folders as well as the small ones, they're still there in the same places, but just diminished in a small way. Visually, I guess, is the way that we wanted to put that. The last one that I wanted to just give you a look at what we've done is the contact screen. And so let's go back to the 2012 contact screen. You can see that we use gradients and harder edges, and this one probably has changed the least of all of them because this was actually one of the newer interfaces that we had created previously. In 2012, it's transitioned to something more like this. And so subtle little changes, but hopefully they all fit together to make a more pleasing experience for the users. Before I switch off this, I want to point out a couple of other minor things that we've done to the overall look. With the toolbar itself being kind of, again, visually diminished so that as your eyes find the list, they don't have to hop over that as an obstacle, we have tried to make a handful stand out in comparison to the others. So you'll see, like this new mail icon, the new appointment or the new task, they have special colored icons to make them stand out. When you open an individual item view, most of the toolbar is diminished and small, but some of the key elements, the send, the cancel, has a more dominant colored icon, as does the address book. This is something that we're playing around with, trying to tweak and make better. But the idea being that the toolbar is kind of a utility belt, but it's also a very complex space that in previous releases demanded more attention than we felt it deserved. It, by its very nature of where it's placed on the screen, it already gets some attention, and so we're trying to make that blend in just a little bit while leaving it there and familiar. All right. Do you know, are there questions or anything, or should I keep moving on?
Keep going, and let's pause from time to time, just ask for questions. Jeff, is there anything right now that we want to address from a question standpoint?
Nope, and again, I'm delegating them as they come in. So, Scott, we've got a team of guys that will support you with questions, and if they don't have the answer, I'll have them chime in, but we're still good, guys, so keep on going.
Awesome. Great. Thank you. Just wanted to make sure. So from here in the demo, I'm going to transition to the changes that we've made on the compose views or the individual item views. And let's start with the new mail message. Right out of the gate, you can see we've reduced the number of elements on the toolbar itself. We have gotten rid of some things that weren't used for every message that you send and tried to simplify this process down to who are you going to send it to, what's the subject and the message body. We really felt like that there were a lot of messages that really fit that bill, and you didn't need all of that other stuff right out of the gate, calling attention to itself and in some regards demanding that you pay attention to it and look at it. So some of the elements like that would have been the attachment control, the from, the CC, the from, the CC, and the BC. They're all elements that, while useful, weren't used all of the time. And so we are working to make this simple face the easiest to use, and then we're going to make it more accessible to add that other stuff back in for those who want it back in. So we've streamlined this view. Again, you put who you're going to mail it to, the subject and the message body, and boom, you can hit send, and that's it. Now with that, we do realize that the occasions for using these other elements are common. And so we've got a couple of different solutions for that. One is for the user who uses them occasionally, but maybe say 1 in 5, 1 in 10 messages needs one of these elements. So you can quickly in this element display the from, the CC, or the BC, and they're there. Sorry, I'm clicking on the wrong space, so I'm tripping myself up as I'm trying to talk and click at the same time. The from is what we found is mostly useful for those that are either proxying or using a POP or IMAP account that they want to send to. Other than that, most of the time the from, it's always from you, and so it's natural to kind of hide that element. And the CC and BC kind of fall into that camp of you use it sometimes and you don't. So for that user who uses them occasionally, they click them on, they hit send, and they immediately pop back to hidden. So each time you use it, you can display it as you use it, but it doesn't get in your way each time. For other users who want to use that much more than 1 in 5, maybe every other one, or they prefer the feel of having that on the screen, this element has been added to the interface, and we're calling this the slide out. So if you click on here, it opens the slide out, and you have the ability now to make the from, CC, and BC stick. And when you set it like that, you can set it the way you want, and it will stay whichever way you want. And you can toggle back and forth between the sort of on-demand approach or the sticky approach. Getting back to the simplified view, I'm going to transition from that part now to talking about some of the other elements that we've injected onto the view. One of them is the idea of a personal versus a group message. And notice that I'm saying specifically personal. For those of you who've used GroupWise in the past, we we had used the word posted to imply something that is not distributed to other people, that just is for you. We have transitioned that verbiage in Windermere to be personal. And so this element here will toggle between a group and a personal message. This is most significant and most useful as you do some calendaring options. Like over here I've put a placeholder. This is a placeholder meeting that I just typed in and put over here. Notice it's a personal appointment, and it's already committed to the database. But now with this element on the screen, it's very easy to toggle between personal groups. So you can create this personal one, come in, change it to a group message, enter who you want to send it to, send it, and off you go. Underneath in the database, we'll take that personal message that was created before, and we will delete it for you, and giving the user the impression that we kind of transitioned from personal to group in a single step. So the user experience, the overall user experience is very smooth and very simple and very easy. A couple of other the UI elements that we've kind of diminished or kind of moved around to make them stand out less is the next one that I want to talk about is inside the HTML message body itself. This HTML toolbar that controls the font and bolding, and you can do links and all kinds of powerful composing of the message, we've moved to the bottom. And part of the reason we did that, well, probably the main reason we found is that you don't use that all of the time. And so having it be here at the top was something akin to clutter that you kind of had to look past in many instances because you didn't use it. So again, back to that principle, we've left it here. It's still there. It's familiar. It's the same toolbar that you have, but it's moved to the bottom. And the other thing worth noting is it only displays when your focus is inside the message body. So if I click outside of the message body, it's gone. Click inside the message body, it's there. Once again, reducing visual clutter on the screen. The other thing that we've done like that is the attachment control. So instead of having it be that old white space that we had down there, which kind of demanded that you do something about it, we've put this gray bar down here. It's very accessible. You can either drag and drop anywhere in here on the message to put things in, or you can click on this message and quickly attach, and then the old attachment window will show up and display in the familiar fashion, and then you can interact with it the way you did before. If you want to right-click and add another file, you can. You can use this element to click to add another one, or you can use drag and drop. We're continuing to support all the ways that users did it because we didn't want to disrupt their habits and the things that the way that they already used GroupWise. I want to move from here to talking about how we do addressing in Windermere, which has changed dramatically. The first place that I want to display is we've added to the to list, we're calling this the quick to list. So in GroupWise 2012, we added the idea of relevance to your contacts so that as you name completed to a user and then sent to them, the users that you send to commonly would bubble to the top. This quick to is an overarching list of all of that. So the people that you send to most will be in the top position, and then it will move down from there. And as you add them to the name completion, if you have others, they will pop into this list. And you can quickly address your message without even putting your hands on the keyboard at this point. And that was something that we wanted to accomplish. Now, we know that not everyone is a mouse user or not everyone will want or like that. And so we've also enhanced the name completion significantly. If I start typing in here, notice I typed a B. And the first person that comes up, this is matching not only on whatever name completion order that you had, first last or last first, it's matching on both. So it's matching on users who have the last name who start with B, users who match the first name that start with B, and in addition to that, it's going to match on email addresses that match this as well. The other thing to call out is in previous releases, name completion would be a single entry, and to get through ones that were in we didn't display a list like we're displaying now. So you had to go to some very sophisticated interactions like a down arrow or Control Enter to see a bunch of the options, where now we just populate that up front. And the way that works is that we will go against the most relevant contacts first. They will be displayed at the top of this list, and that will go up to 10 users. If there are more than 10, we won't display anything else. But if there are fewer than 10, we will backfill that list up to 10 with contacts from your system address book, or if you have chosen a shared personal address book, they will backfill with people from, they'll actually backfill in this order. First, any shared personal address books, and then your system book. And so you do have control over whether or not to include shared personal address books. If you don't like that going in there, you can turn that off, and they won't show up in that name completion order. We're very excited about this interaction with the name completion. I think this area alone has been kind of a difficulty for our users, and we've gotten some very good feedback from our beta sites and our early users that this is definitely going to make everyday use of GroupWise much easier and more useful for our users. The next thing that I want to show you is what we've done with signatures. So with signatures in the past, I'm almost embarrassed to talk about it now, but you would go in and configure a signature, and you really didn't have a feel for what that signature looked inside your message until it was sent. You went to look at your sent items or happened to put yourself on the distribution list to see that. Back to that principle, we want to make it very easy to see what your settings are, and so that you can interact with them. We've completely changed how signatures work. And so if you don't have a signature configured, or you've chosen to not automatically add it, you will have this element, which is intentionally gray, hopefully conveying the message that this click to add signature is not part of your message, that will never get sent along to other users. It's an interactive element that we've injected into the screen. So you can click to add it, and the click to add is going to immediately add your default signature. If you had chosen to automatically add it, it would come up like this. And let's say you've configured multiple signatures. If you hover over the signature, you can pop up with this and then toggle between your signatures that simply. If you choose to automatically add it, and this happens to be a message where you don't want to use the signature, you can click over this X and remove it, and now you're back to there. We felt like that really covered the user interactions surrounding the signature for the most part, at least the ones that are most common, dealing with everyday sending. If you want to, say, add a new signature once you've already added them, we've utilized the slide out again in this circumstance. And so you can come to this area of the slide out, and you can choose to either modify an existing signature, which also on here you can control whether or not it's the default. You can choose to delete one, or you can add a brand new one at this point. With that being said, I'll just be candid with you. The one setting that we haven't bubbled up into here, and it didn't make it because we were trying to reduce the clutter all around, and we didn't think it was a commonly changed setting, and that is the setting that actually controls whether or not you automatically add or don't automatically add the signature. That one still is in Tools, Options, Environment, Signatures to control that. We will be looking in future releases of a better place to put that. But this is where we drew the line with the signatures. All right, I'm going to transition here from this view and kind of give you a little overview of the slide out. Our intention with this slide out was to not duplicate everything in tools options. In other words, we don't want this to become a chock full interface element that's cluttered, that's difficult to find things. We're being very choosy about what things that we stick inside this slide out. So it has to meet a couple of criteria or it's not even going to be considered. The one is it has to be contextually relevant in the area that we're using it. And the other thing is it has to be something that users might reasonably want to change certainly more than once or twice a year. And so the elements that we put on, that was kind of the criteria that we used to put elements in the slide out. So signature enhancements go in here. You can modify the item type, and so you can change it between an appointment, note, or task. This one is kind of put here to make it easier in the future to just have an element on the screen that's just new item, and then you can easily change between the different item types. For now, we're not going to change that. We're going to see how this element is used by our users and then potentially move forward on more aggressive simplifications in the interface utilizing this element. Some of the settings that were obscure that users just had a hard time finding were also criteria that we used to put this in, and this check spelling was one of those. Something that's just kind of buried in tools options that is relevant to composing. You have more control over here, and then obviously the show CCBC. Now, another place where we're utilizing the slide out is in the case of reply, and this is one of those ones that in the past the user interaction was slightly clunky. If I would right-click on an element in my list and choose reply in GroupWise 2012, you would be presented with a dialog that would ask you some questions, like, do you want to reply to all or to the sender? Or do you want to include the message or not? And while those questions weren't necessarily bad, the timing of them made it such that if you changed your mind after that dialog came up, you were kind of in a pickle, especially if you'd started composing some things inside the message body. You would essentially have to copy that to the clipboard, cancel that action, and go back and start over. And so in Windermere, we've tried to smooth that interaction out. And so initially, you won't see the dialog for the reply options. They're here, popped out in the slide out. Now, they're automatically popped out in the slide out until the users kind of get the transition between the old functionality and the new functionality. We'll leave it there as long as they want, but they do have this option to uncheck that, saying, you know, I use a different way. I might come into reply from an open item view where I already make my choices, and I don't want to make these choices. So we will, for those who value the real estate more than that, if you uncheck this, the next time you do a reply, it won't automatically be opened. But remember that the settings are always just a click away in the slide out. And so if you come in to a reply and you chose reply to sender and you really want it to be all, you can change your mind throughout the process up until you hit send. If you want to include the message body or not, you can toggle that. And we have other less common elements that people really didn't know we had because they were buried on some of these dialogues, like whether or not to include the attachments from the original sender if there hadn't been those on there. And so the other thing that we've tried to do here is draw a relationship between reply and forward. The differences between reply and forward are very subtle. Reply is use the original distribution list either to just the sender or to everyone and add a little something to the message body. Forward is take that original message body and add recipients to the distribution list. And the reason why I'm telling you that is in the future we're looking at more simplified interactions that come across more like that. Imagine a future time where to make a change like this, you could just open up a message and say, I want to edit it, and to forward it, you would modify the distribution list by adding people. To reply, you would simply put the focus in the message body and type, and the reply would just go out. That's the kind of things that we're looking at as we move forward through this. All right. I want to show you one other thing about the slide out, and that has to do with when you're actually reading a message. And so we've reduced the number of tabs that you have here in this section, and we've pushed some of that into the slide out. So the personalized tab is one of those. So you can come over here and make your personalization notes. You can associate a contact with this message that may have not been on here so that you can later use your contact history to find them, or you can categorize from here. The other place where we've done that is we've removed the task list tab. And so if I open up a task item, we actually didn't push this into the slide out because it's actually part of the task itself. And so you'll see that for a task, you'll be able to modify the due date directly on the view itself, modify its % complete, and change the priority right here where it is close to where it's going to be displayed normally. And as I was doing that, that reminded me, one of the other key elements to personalization was modifying the subject. And modifying the subject now is this pencil here where you can click on that. It will select everything. So if I just start typing, it will replace that. If you want to keep that subject and add to it, you could just click to remove the selection. But notice that as soon as I do that, that pencil turns into this sort of undo looking thing where I can just revert it back to the original subject. So if I click on here, go into edit mode, one click will revert it back to what it was before. And so you have a much more simplified user interaction. And again, the idea of this personalization of the subject, instead of bearing it on a different tab where you didn't have, where you had to go to look for it, it's right here in your face and more proximate to the user interface elements that are there on the screen.
Scott, this is Jeff. I wanted to jump in real quick because I know we're getting a lot of questions from folks of a variety of different types. Some folks are asking you to actually show something very quickly, and so I've been passing everything on to Dean since he's sitting right there. But we're also getting a lot of folks that are chiming in with their preferences or what they like or what they would like to see from a design perspective. And so, Dean, I wanted to ask you, this is probably not the right forum for those types of comments or requests, but what is the proper channel for those types of requests? If people want to just kind of go on record as saying, this is something I would like to see, or this is something that I just don't like.
Great question. We do have a variety of different ways that they can contact us and submit their input. The request for enhancements site that you find on Novell.com is the most general way that you can funnel requests and information into our product management team and our engineering team, and we consider those as new releases come out. They can also reach out to us via the GroupWise blog, or they can reach out to me directly through my email address, dlithgow@novell.com. Any of those are acceptable, and certainly very anxious to speak with anyone about the things they'd like to see in the product. That's always great feedback and input.
Yep. Okay, great. So folks, if you don't mind, if you can try to put a filter through your questions first before submitting them. If it's something you would like for Scott to show you quickly, send them in, and I'll quickly hand them over to Dean, and hopefully Scott doesn't go too far away from where he was, that he can get back there quickly and show them what they're asking for. If it's preferences, or if it's a question of functionality, does it do this? Does it sync with this? Does it compatible with this? Those are also fair game. But if you have questions about design, or preferences, or just want to make a statement, let's use those channels that Dean just mentioned as a reference or a place to submit those, and that will help kind of clean up the amount of traffic that we have in our questions box right now. So thanks, Scott.
Thank you, Jeff. Very well said. I appreciate that. All right. Do we have any questions that are outstanding that you want me to address now, or do you want me to just move on?
I do have a couple of questions that at least I've lost whether the context was.
I can get back to anything, though. Just tell me what you want to see.
So they did. I did have someone ask. I think I answered it and you covered it, but I want to make sure. Is the name completion control search order? Can you show that and explain how that's changed in GroupWise 2014?
Very good question, and I'm very glad you asked that, because we have made some significant changes in that area with the name completion search order. First and foremost, I'll be candid with you. This might be kind of a controversial subject, but the notion of the name completion search order itself has been removed. Now, before you fry me for that one, let me finish and explain what we've done, and hopefully you'll understand where we've gone with this. The order itself has kind of been supplanted by this notion of relevance, and so that each contact, regardless of which personal address book they reside in, the more you use that contact, the more they'll bubble to the top, and they will show up first. And so, instead of having a name completion order that's book specific, we have now transitioned into a purely relevant space that crosses all of your personal address books. And so you do have control over which books even get a crack at it, and the way that's done is via right-clicking on a contact book and choosing this box here that says include this book when name completing. By default, if you add a new book, that won't get checked, and so you need to add it in later. And the other thing worth noting, as I mentioned in the beginning before, is that shared personal address books won't show up automatically unless you go in and actually check those. So again, to summarize, you can control, include, or exclude any personal address books, but the idea of order, and the one thing that I think might be a concern for people is we no longer have the ability to put the system address book ahead of personal address books. Now, again, let me explain why we've chosen to do that. We felt like that, number one, the biggest reason for that were plenty of bugs that users had experienced over the years that we'd either fixed or come close to fixing. But the one other thing that we've done in this release to solidify that is that if you name complete to someone just by typing their email address, whether you do it in web access or whether you do it in the client, you just type their email address, and you happen to get it wrong, and it results in an undeliverable address. We actually tag every one of those that have been sent as undeliverable, and those addresses will never show up in name completion at any time. The contacts themselves will reside in whichever book that they got put in, but they will never get bubbled up into the name completion control. So we will never perpetuate bad addresses in this release. And so the one solution that I have for those that are just bent on saying I don't want any personal address books, or I want that order, is you'd have to uncheck all of your personal books, and then the name completion would function only against your system book. All right, with that, did I get any mean or think people not liking that?
Not yet.
Okay.
Maybe they're planning their attack.
Okay.
But I did have another question for you, and it has to do with the slide out settings.
Okay.
And the slide out settings, their question is, how is that controlled? Are they administrator controlled settings? Are they client? Are they stored in the registry? tell us a little bit of how those settings can be affected both for the user as well as from an administrator standpoint.
Super good question, and I'm glad you brought that up. The settings that we've put in the slide out, by and large, are not new, with the exception of the show from CCBC. This one happened at such a late stage in the game. It was something that kind of transitioned as we found different beta sites were not happy with everything that we'd done, and so unfortunately the settings for just show from CC and BC are only in the registry at this point. We are planning to move those into the database in a future release, and we'll migrate those to make that easier. But any other setting that was already in, say, tools options, bubbled up, like signature, the check spelling and whatnot, all we've done is bubble up an interface element that acts on exactly the same setting that it did before. And so I guess the short answer is it depends on which setting. What we didn't do is do a broad sweep through all of our settings and commit them all to the database or change administrator control. What we did do is say if there was administrator control over them before, there still is. We didn't break that. And for ones that we added new, we want to add administrator control, and we will continue to press forward on that. So, all right. It's kind of hard to do this without the interaction of the audience saying, yeah, that's okay, or doing follow-up questions. But hopefully that answers that question. Anything else before I move on, Dean?
Not for right now. Thank you.
Okay. I'm really actually winding down. There are a couple of features that I wanted to call to your attention. This one has to do with accepting an appointment. In previous releases, accepting an appointment, you could always click these buttons up here, and they continue to be there in the same spot. But we had features like this, where you could control the accept level at the time that you accept. You could put in a comment, and you could actually accept it to a calendar. But what we found is this was such a buried thing that nobody really knew it was there. And so we bubbled that up, and we've injected it down here at the bottom of the accept screen so that you can easily see what state these settings are currently in. This is the accept level. It's defaulted to busy. It will automatically accept to your main calendar, and then if you hit accept here or accept here, it will take those settings. If you want to decline, you can pop this section up and do some basic decline options. But what we really wanted to do is utilize this space down here to present something that was mostly hidden before. Now, once you've accepted an appointment, this section doesn't display anymore. And so if you want to decline it after the fact, then you'll need to go back to the old ways to do it. But we felt like that the clutter was really only warranted at the time of accepting, and then after the fact, we're going to, push it back to maximizing your real estate with the message body. But with that being said, let me give you a little bit of background of why we've been able to accomplish some of the things that we've done, like with the slide out and with this accept section down here on the view. In previous releases, the views themselves were .dew files, which were a proprietary file format that we started clear back in Office 4.0 or even before that maybe. And it required the view designer to make customized views or to make changes on those. And the other thing on our side of it, architecturally, it was very painful to make changes dynamically on the fly because of that. So to get rid of some of those obstacles in our code, we are now transitioning in Windermere away from, we're deprecating the .dew file format. We'll still support it if you have old views, but they won't necessarily get all the new functionality. The new view file format is simply HTML, CSS, pretty basic standard stuff. We haven't done a lot of work in this release to make it easily customizable, but anyone savvy that knows HTML just a little bit, could take our existing files and tweak those and make modifications to them if they wanted to. And we will look to make that easier as we go forward. But moving to this HTML style of view, things like the slide out become incredibly easier. This accept and decline section are much easier to code. Having elements that are mixed, customizable and not customizable are significantly easier, and for us to inject on the fly contextually relative elements is much easier. So we've laid a very nice architectural framework in place that now in future releases we'll be able to utilize and use that more to our advantage in the future. So I'm excited about being able to do more stuff with that in the future. All right, I want to transition now to a couple of other what I would consider sort of productivity types of enhancements. And getting back to this idea of being able to run without the folder list on, in fact, actually just to maximize my real estate, I'm just going to hide that and then slide this quick viewer over for a second so that you can see this, how simple it is. We have injected now onto right-click menus, onto the toolbar for the quick viewer, and on an open item view, a move and link to option that gives you access to your most commonly used folders. And so with a single click, you can take and move your items to that folder. So I can take that message, click, go to the next one, and very easily navigate or basically triage my mailbox and move things around in very quick fashion now. The way this works is it's based on the relevance that we started in GroupWise 2012. In previous releases, we called it recently used folders. We've kind of fine-tuned that to be frequently used folders. Right now, it's based on relevance, so the folders that you use the most, whether it's clicking and navigating to them or dragging and dropping messages to those, that they will be your most relevant and they will bubble up. We're still fine-tuning that algorithm, but the way it stands right now for Windermere is that you will get your first 10 bubble up on here. If you have more than 10, you will be able to go to this More dialog, and you'll get your second 10 in this space right here. So you'll basically have access pretty easily to your top 20 most frequently used folders. We think that's going to hit a large share of our users, but we are looking for feedback on how we can kind of fine-tune that. We've already received a couple of ideas that we're looking to inject in there, but that is an area where we are looking for more feedback from you and from our customers. Another area that fits underneath the productivity is the idea of scrolling elements. In previous releases, to scroll an element on the screen, you had to put focus in. So here I'm using the mouse wheel on my mouse to scroll the list, but it would work like this in previous releases because the focus is here. If I wanted to scroll this folder list, I would have to put focus over here, and then I could do it. Now in Windermere, you notice the focus is in the folder list, but if I put the mouse over this space, I could scroll with the mouse wheel. If this space here were had enough information in it that it needed to scroll, that would also be accessible to scroll with the mouse wheel scrolling, meaning you don't have to put focus in to do it. Same thing over here. I can put the mouse wheel over this space and scroll it. I can put the mouse wheel over this space and scroll it as well, which is actually new. We didn't have this type of scrolling for navigation. So that's a simple little productivity enhancement that we've added. Another one that we hope will make it easier to identify or see what we've done new in this release in kind of a less intrusive way than we've done it in the past is this welcome screen. So the welcome screen is injected here onto the navigation bar. If you click on that and go over and look at it, you will be presented with this page that gives you some options to explore and find out what's new in GroupWise. We've tried to make it easy to transition from old systems, and especially Outlook, to kind of give you ideas of how to do that. But look for that welcome screen as a nice place that's sort of passive. It's there when you need it, but it doesn't get in your way the first time GroupWise starts up or anything, saying, you know, before you read your email, you need to see all the new stuff. It's there when you need it, and you can go explore it whenever you as a user wants to do that. A couple of other features that have been bubbled up that are worth mentioning, mostly because I find them really useful, is in GroupWise 2012, we added the idea of editing an appointment, and we broke that editing of an appointment into two parts. Instead of it being resend, we added edit, and then we added duplicate. And we found that idea of duplicate, of using this existing message, was so powerful that we've made that more ubiquitous in GroupWise in Windermere. So if you right-click on any message, whether you sent it or not, you can choose to duplicate that. And what duplicate really means is, I'm not sure what's going on there, but what it means is populate the message with all of the data from that existing message, and then you can choose to tweak it if you want. So the complete distribution list, the whole message body, if it's an appointment, it will be all of the time criteria and everything for that. Let's see. There have been a handful of keyboard accelerators added to this release. So if you're in the list and you do Control-Shift-F, that will put focus in the filter for you heavy keyboard users. You can type in here and it will filter the list. If you hit Escape, it will take it off of there. While you're on an item view, and okay, so there's something wrong with this store, so I'm going to recycle and start over. That's the demo part of this messing me up. If I go in here, I have control. If I do Control 1, it's going to show from, 2 is CC, 3 is BC, and 4 will toggle between the personal and group. If you want to toggle the signature, you can do Alt-T. Right, Alt-T toggles the signature off and on, so for you keyboard users. All right, I'm getting the signal to move on. Let me just transition very quickly over to Web Access and give you a brief overview of what we've done in Web Access. Web Access has also changed their look to match the client where it possibly could. And the one significant thing that I want to show you in Web Access is the fact that we have polling now in place. So if I come back over here and say send a message, and I'm going to make it from a different user so you know I'm not pulling anything. So I'm going to send that, and then I'll pop over to my Web Access, and you'll see that in a second. Actually, I'm in caching mode. Let me send and retrieve that. Oh no, I hope I haven't been in Web Access long enough where this doesn't happen. The idea is that it will automatically, while you're sitting in Web Access, you don't have to hit refresh. It will automatically pop in there. All right, so I think throughout this demo, I may have got it into a state where it's not. So let me just, yeah, it may take a second to get here. I am determined to show you this, and so I'm going to let it. That's what I was afraid of was going to happen, that I got kicked out. All right. With that being said, as I am showing this part, I'm going to go back and actually send yet another one. No, that one didn't even show up.
Yeah, isn't that the message?
Oh, it is. Sorry. Now I'm just fooling myself into not knowing it. Okay, I'm going to do one more. And while I'm saying that, start queuing up questions or anything that you have for me, and I will answer those as soon as I get you this, show you this. Oh, it beat me. It was already there. So there you go. So I guess the moral of the story is you can't have your timeout incurred in Web Access, but you'll see that. And let's see, high-level overview of the look of Web Access. Not changed too much, but fitting kind of the overall design of the colors and whatnot. So that's my quick nod to Web Access for you. Okay. I'm not sure that I got them in the right order. I'll tell you the order that I'm going to go in. There was a question about spanning columns in the home view, about saving custom views, about task list % complete, and then changing the font size on views. That's what I have, right?
There was one other question about notify capability in Web Access, and we can't demo that because that's not functionality that is new to GroupWise 2014. In particular, they're wanting notifications on new appointments, so they get an alarm or a reminder of that. And unfortunately, that is not a feature of the notify feature of the Web Access product. So back to you, Scott.
All right. Spanning columns in the home is simple once you find out where it is, but basically you click on the panel edit and you choose to span all columns, and then boom. You can have as many column spanning panels as you want, but it's as simple as that. Question number 1 done. All right. I'm going to way hit this 10-minute thing. Question number 2 is about how you save custom views with the HTML, and it's exactly the same as it was before. So let's just put some information in here. And then you choose Save View, and you're presented with a view that, notice it says Custom HTML View with Text. We don't even have the ability to save in the old style anymore. So this GHV is kind of a special extension that we've registered as our own. It's underneath though. It's HTML. So it's actually HTML. This one is going to be HTML with some of our data associated with it. So I'm going to call it template. I'll save it. I get prompted for a view name. We'll just call it template so we know. You need to make it something other than what the existing ones are. And then you do that. And now, once you go back to your mail, you'll see that there's a mail template. And if I open that, it has that information. You could put attachments on there too, I think. Now, there was a little bit of behind-the-scenes stuff that I did. So just to cover this front to back, when I chose that Save As, it went to a directory on my disk, which is C:\custom views. Users can choose that, and the way you set that up inside of GroupWise is in Tools, Options, Environment, File, Location. And as long as this directory is configured as the same place where you save that view, then the view will be showing up on the menu. And you can do that for any of the types as well. All right? That's question number 2. I assume that is that...
The only thing that may be semi-related to that, Scott, is how robust can that HTML be when you save that view, and does it recover a round trip? So, you know, I put a lot of effort into designing an HTML message view that's got a lot of information in it. You know, can that come back as a template?
It should save everything that you've customized on the screen, right? If it doesn't, then we would consider that a bug. And the only reason why I say that is I personally haven't done extensive testing. We've gone to great lengths to make sure that it works, at the very least to carry over the same type of functionality that we had in 2012. And so if you find that it functions differently than that, let us know, and we'll submit a bug, and we'll go on from there. The next question was about percent complete, and the question was surrounding the column that we put in is blank. And I think the reason why is because in order to see the percent complete in the column, you not only have to have a taskless item, you need to be viewing it as taskless. And so what I've done here is, when I was demoing before, my list was just basically details. So I'm just right-clicking outside of the first, part of here and changing it from view by details to view as taskless. And you see I have 2 items that I have in here. They are showing now percent complete. This one's obviously 25%, that one's 50. If I were to switch into columns mode, it would show it. So I guess the short answer to the person asking the question, in order for it to be filled in, you have to be viewing it as task list, and they need to be in the task list in order to get that to work.
That is true in GroupWise 2012 as well, right? They can test that today with their 2012 clients.
Yeah, and I guess the long story short there is nothing has changed on that in Windermere. If you have feedback around that or how you'd like to see that behave differently, push that through the channels that we talked about before, which Dean enumerated. All right, the last one is about changing font sizes on views and whatnot. If you're able to right-click anywhere on a view, you can change the font size, and it will change. This one might have some problems because of what I'm doing on Windows 8 here, but you can see that it carries that forward into the view. So it's basically right-click anywhere. You can change the body color, and this is going to change it for the specific header type that you're on. So this one's for an item view, which takes care of compose and read. It looks like that the 2 is not responding to that. Now that probably is a bug that has to do with this element that we injected into HTML. So I will actually submit that as a defect after we leave here. You can do that in other places if you have, any place where you have a header area on the screen. If you right-click and choose font size, and you can choose the text color and the header color, and that's gonna change it in a very specific section of the element. If you want to do overall changes to the color schemes, you can choose Customize Navigation Bar, and you can change between the high-level color schemes, which change pretty much all of the elements, so they're complementary to each other, but you can choose to go rogue and do those individual pieces if you want to. All right, and with that, I think,
there's a couple of other ones that have come in.
Okay.
Let me, similar question about the font type. Maybe you demoed this and I just wasn't paying attention because I was reading questions, but is it possible to set the default font type and size for all email open?
Let me double check that. I think if you just change it, it sticks, right?
in Tools Options, I believe that there are.
Oh, that's right. That's right. So you're right. So there's definitely here where you can set actually just, you know, a font type here and a height. So this is for Compose, and this is for the read side. We don't let you have that much control because that's actually controlled at send time. So certainly for Compose, you can do it for HTML or plain text in this dialog here.
And then the other questions were somewhat related to the HTML templates, and they're comparing GroupWise's functionality of what you demoed with what some of our partners are able to do, like Advances in their kind of robust sort of templates. And of course, we don't have a default set of templates that you could choose from and modify, but you can set up templates and save those and then reuse those.
Yep, that's exactly right. Dean answered the question for you.
So I think that concludes them all, Scott.
All right. Came in
Great.
early, Jeff.
Perfect, guys. 30 seconds to remain. You want to do anything for 30 seconds, Scott, or you going to hand it over to Dave? I'll take it over.
I think I'll hand it over to Dave. I appreciate being here with you. We're excited about Windermere, but as always, from an engineering perspective, we consider this a step in a direction, certainly not a destination by any stretch. So we're looking forward to hearing your feedback of what you think about this. But we're excited about Windermere and looking forward to the future.
Awesome. Thanks, Scott. I appreciate your time.